Hi, friends. We're going to get back here and finish this up so that maybe you can watch it later. Um, yeah, there's it's really not the tech on our end. We've made a check on our end, so it seems to be Facebook Live is having a moment today. So we're gracious enough to crash the platform. So we'll try again. Um, but we'll finish up our time today, so that maybe you can come back and catch this later. Or hi Donna, glad you've made it back, and maybe a few others will as well. I'll give it one more minute, and then we'll just kind of finish up what we had for today. Because I think I just went back and looked, and I think I left it at this place of like, what do we do with this these these resistances? So, um, yes, it is the nature of where we find ourselves right now with the tech. So we'll continue to I'll give it till 43. Hi, hello. I see a few of you making your way back again. Thank you for your persistence. It doesn't so we're doing all we can, but we don't run Facebook, so. All right, we'll let folks come along and connect as they can, and we'll get going. So we were talking about this 32nd chapter of Jeremiah, this story of Jeremiah when encountering all of this resistance, literally in the name of a giant army outside. And that in this giant army that is outside of the city, Jeremiah is contending not just with them, and walking around saying, which is not impressing anybody, that, oh, by the way, that big army out there is going to get you all. And so this notion that we could and should somehow contend with these giants of the world and these tectonic plates that are moving around us, and that this notion that they might very well get us in some form or another. So what are we to do? Now, so if we remember, Jeremiah was a prophet, and but Jeremiah is not a popular prophet. Few of the prophets are. Jeremiah is a prophet who is in the midst of this time, and going around saying that this army is going to destroy, and so there's this resistance to hearing what Jeremiah has to say. And so I want to talk about that's really what I wanted to leave you with today. That actually I had a really great thing that you all didn't hear, but maybe we can get back to it. That there are these ways that the resistance shows up for us. And so the first thing they try and do to Jeremiah is they try to stifle him. So they try and stifle him. He is one who's bringing the word of the Lord. They're trying to stifle what he has to say. The king, they lock him up in the courtyard. They're like, you can't just walk around and talk to people because you're creating panic. We can't accept that the fact that what's going on with you right here and right now, like what's going on, we know there's a big army out there. We'd rather not talk about it. So, and you talking about it like they are in fact going to come get us, it is not helping anybody's nerves around here. So they lock him up in the courtyard, and the king comes down and says, why are you prophesying like this? Stop it. It literally, the words are, why do you prophesy as you do? You say, this is what the Lord says, and I'm about to give this city into the hands of the king of Babylon. You're not helping. Stop saying that. Stop it. Stop saying what is true and what is likely. If we find ourselves in these days, and there's these three ways that they try to shut Jeremiah down, and this is the first one. And I think there are three ways that we try to shut down God's operation with us when we're contending with these big movements and these big things that seemingly would overwhelm us. and the truth of our life as it is, where we are. And the first way that they contend with is that they stifle him. They stifle Jeremiah. They quell his voice. Now, I believe that God's call is a lot like a little terrier that's pulling at your pant leg. And that little terrier will you can kick it away, but it will keep coming back and tugging at you. And so I would submit that if in this time, like if these days you're struggling, there's this thing that keeps just kind of bubbling to the top. And then you kind of pull a classic kind of Marge Simpson. You just push it down, Lisa, push it down. But then it kind of comes back up to the top. If you find yourself stifling some truth about your life, something that may be a Jeremiah moment. That might be a Jeremiah call to you to hearing what's going on. So the first thing that happens, and again, this doesn't make us bad people. This isn't about our sin. This is because we are sinful. We're imperfect. We're finite. All those things are true. Yet we are also in this way that of coming into being and being drawn towards God's table and being drawn towards life and grace and peace and goodness. And that this drawing brings with it a resistance from that which is around us. So the first thing is that we try to stifle the Jeremiah voice in us. The second thing we do is we reject it. Jeremiah says, you turn your back to God when you should turn your face to God. Instead of turning your face to God, you turn your backs to him. There's this way that we reject what it is we're being called to do. There's this way that we simply, and a lot of that is often just this notion where we refuse to accept the truth of where we are. Maybe we have something going on. Maybe we have a health issue. Maybe we have employment issue. Maybe we have some sort of relationship issue, some sort of job issue, something out there. We've got and there's plenty of that. Maybe we're contending with the fear of the age that we're in. Maybe there's any manner of things that we could be contending with right now. But what we're doing is we're rejecting the truth of where we are, rejecting the truth of what is, rejecting the truth of our life right now. We turn our backs to this big scary monster, the reality that there's a big scary monster out there that's going to eat us, so that we don't have to contend with the monster. I've been to a lot of church meetings in my life. I've been doing church now for 25 years, 20 years as an ordained person. I've been in a lot of church meetings, and one of the things that can easily happen is to talk about all kinds of things that are unimportant, just so we simply don't have to talk about the things that are important. It's very easy, and we can do that in our own lives. We can reject God's call for our life. And so if there's an elephant in your living room, well, call it. Don't call it gray and just say it's just a mouse. Don't try to spiritualize away the Lord will take care of it. Now hug the elephant. Go find that monster that's that's at the edge of the gates and point to it and say that is what's going on right now. Because rather than reject the truth of our lives, reject what's going on. Because in it is Jeremiah's voice. Because Jeremiah's voice is in the midst of these things that we're rejecting. Third thing that we when we contend with the resistance of this age, when we contend with the difficulty of it, is that we corrupt God's call. And I think we do, and the text says we do this in a particular way, and I think we do, because I'm guilty of this. I think we're all guilty of this. And he says, you corrupted it by worshiping Molech and by sacrificing your children, even when I never asked you to do so. When I never asked you to do so, you sacrificed your children. Think about that for a minute. Gnaw on that one for a little bit. They've fallen into child sacrifice And God never asked for child sacrifice. God actually asked for the opposite. Because they've fallen into this worship of Moloch. Now, what does that mean? What's the big deal of that? And how does that all work? To see the thing about the worship of Moloch, Moloch is the machine god. Moloch is the god. So Moloch is this god that is not about letting God be God, but Moloch, our worship of Moloch is about us being God. Us trying to take responsibility, make sacrifices, do things so that we can make it right. Because clearly God's just asleep at the wheel. I don't know what the Lord is thinking about this life that we're living these days. I can't possibly imagine who would let that person be president. I can't possibly imagine what kind of God would let this virus be on the world. I can't imagine who would not have a crosswalk at that particular place in the city. Like, we can go on and on about all the things that God hasn't done, and all the things that we are supposed to be like taking responsibility to fix about those things and all these things. And what it puts us in this position of making sacrifice that God never asked us to make. It puts it taking responsibilities for things that God never asked us to take responsibility for, when we're not taking responsibility for the things that we are actually in our sphere and actually in our kin and in our ability. This corruption this is the other way, is that so we stifle, we push down that voice, and we don't listen to it unless we then we lock it up in the king's palace. And I love this image because we lock it in the king's palace. We'll have this little conversation in our head with our little higher self, and but we won't let it penetrate our heart. We won't let it work it out in our body. We just lock it up here, and we'll have this little conversation with God up here. Or we reject it outright. There can be this big truth in our life, and we just refuse to deal with it. Or we corrupt it. We start taking responsibility for things that aren't ours to take responsibility for. We try to work out, we make sacrifices. This is where often our righteous indignation shows up in this, how could the Lord do this to me? And I'm not mocking that, because it is a real spiritual state, and I've been there and you've been there, and it's not to say that it's invalid, but it is to say, if we really begin to look at it hard, we end up understanding that Jeremiah's voice is just on the other side of it. And what is Jeremiah's solution again? Jeremiah's solution is, with an army outside, with a city that is about to be overrun, everyone abducted or killed and dragged off, he spends his fortune on the land of where he stands. He spends his silver. He spends his understanding. Silver is a correspondence to thought. He spends the way that he thinks on being right where he is, right here and right now. He's not wishing he was someplace else, and he's not dressing up the fact that things are better than they are. He is simply owning, not just occupying, okay, I'll live here, but I won't like it. No, he purchases a bill of sale. He purchases a field, and he holds the deed. And he says, it might not work out right now, but I know in the long run, the love of God will overcome all of this army that's outside of us, and we will occupy and stand in our holy land. That's his solution. But I think right now we're not in solutions. We're looking for solutions, obviously. But right now, I think many of us are doing, what I'm doing often with my days, is I'm actually contending with my resistances. I'm contending with this thing that would stifle God's voice, the things that would reject God's voice, the things that would corrupt God's call for me in these days. And that as we can kind of understand these and move into them a little more, we can help ourselves to hear the true call of Jeremiah. Because Jeremiah's promise is this, and I'll end this here, is that Jeremiah's promise for us is that I will is that is the God was what God promises is to reach into our hearts and pluck from us the heart of stone and place in us a heart of flesh. That's the great promise that comes from Jeremiah about what this process will look like in the days ahead and the weeks ahead, and the love of that Christ Jesus has for each one of us. It is that we will have hearts of flesh. We will be able to stand in the midst of all the things that would seek to destroy us and live fully with open hearts, with minds of wisdom, and with bodies of strength that will not be overcome or failed or broken. That's the promise. That's the promise of buying a little piece of land where you live. That's the promise of listening when we'd rather stifle, of turning our face to the things that we have rather than reject them, and hearing truly and hearing faithfully the call God has for us, rather than corrupting it with our own self-righteousness. All right, friends, that is our hope. That's my hope for you today. I am sorry for the technical issues. It is they're beyond us. We'll put these together, and maybe we'll try to make one out of it so that it can be together. But if you encounter some other folks in our tribe here in your days, let them know that the second half of this kind of was posted, and if they want to hear the better part of the setup, they can catch that along the way. All right, thank you, and we'll pray for more success tomorrow, and we'll be with you with another 11:11 on Thursday. Peace and grace, friends.